Well,
Okay.
thank you for
Yeah.
sitting down with me today. I kind of wanted to start off with, the school choice
Yeah.
bill that you just signed into law. I wasn't here 3 years ago when you kind of first started on this push, so I was kind of wondering, why school choice?
Oh, well, first of all, I've made it very clear that it's critical that we have a strong public school system. It's the foundation of education. It's the foundation of our society and our economy. But it's not a zero-sum game. It also is important, I believe, that parents have a choice in their child's education, that they should be the ones deciding what is the best environment that they can thrive and be everything that they can be. And it shouldn't be solely for those who have the resources or the finances to make that choice. A lot of people were being left out because they didn't have the resources in order to do that. And so COVID also really brought to the table a different dynamic. Parents had a front row seat into their child's education, and they wanted their kids back in the classroom. That was a fight to get that done. They didn't like some of the things that they were seeing being taught, not across the board, but some. And so, this was an opportunity to address some of those concerns and really do it in a manner where I believe the outcome truly elevates education as a whole. So we started on it, this is the third year we finally got it across the finish line, and I'm really excited about it. I'm proud. We're a national leader, and you're going to see a lot of other states, I think, follow suit and follow what Iowa just did.
And so one of the things, you talk about is having all the options on the table for parents
Yep.
with this bill.
Yep.
So for families who, their child may not meet certain criteria or be accepted into every school, who may have concerns about that, what would kind of be your message to them?
So if a parent the parent decides, so if they're in a school and they feel like maybe their child needs more of a faith-based setting, or maybe their child has gotten in trouble and they need a little bit more structure or academics or whatever it may be, IEP, additional resources. If a parent has some concerns with where they're at, then they will be the one that will go to look at some of the other options, and they'll have that conversation with that school, that private school, that accredited private school, and they'll walk through that. Here's what we're looking for, this is what we feel the needs aren't being met, and they will collectively, and sometimes they bring in a public school teacher from one of the public schools, an AEA member, to sit down with the family and talk about the resources that they have available for that student. And then the parent will look at both options and make that choice on what they believe is the right environment for their child. But, I'm not in on those personal conversations. I shouldn't be. It's the parents that are asking the questions that they should be asking or want to ask, and then they'll make their decision based on those responses.
And so if they go in and they have these sorts of conversations, and maybe a parent feels like this would be the right fit for my kid, but the school kind of comes back and says, it doesn't look like it's going to work. For a parent who is excited to have that choice to get to send their kid there, what would that message be to that parent?
Well, then see if maybe there's another option, or if there aren't options, go back and have that conversation with the public school. I mean, if you're trying to get to the question that people have about IEPs and turning those individuals away, I think a lot of times, when you think about the public school system with kids with special needs, or if they have an IEP, they get additional funding for kids that are in that category. So they're weighted differently, and they get additional funding, and because of that, they're able to really provide additional resources for that child to make sure that they have some of the wraparound services that they need. And so with the ESAs and that money now following the child, that will maybe help some of these other schools take some of those resources to increase to be able to provide that additional support that student may need. So I think we'll see how it plays out, but that'll help. Also, private school teachers a lot of times make a lot less, about a third of what the public school teachers make. So this might be an opportunity to increase their salaries as well, and then help thank them for the difference that they're making for children that they're educating in the classroom.
And then I know we kind of just got started on this RFP process
Yeah.
that you talked about. the other day. Have you had any, anyone send any applications in or anything like that?
Well, we couldn't do anything until the bill passed. So the bill passed on Monday. I signed it into law on Tuesday. We actually dropped the RFP on Tuesday. I think it's open for 3 weeks. We did an RFI prior to that, just a request for information. We also spent a lot of time talking to a lot of the other states that currently offer ESAs in one form or another. We probably have one of the most robust ones, but that's ultimately where all of them are trying to get to. So we have a good idea of the companies that are out there that are offering it, but whatever vendor is selected, they'll really manage the account. They'll help provide the auditing part of it. They'll do the security and just to make sure that we're run the operations of it so that we're doing it in the right way. We're trying to manage fraud, accountability, security, just the operational side of it to help with that.
And so you said you mentioned you talked to other states. So I know Arizona was having some problems with who they had run it. What did you kind of learn, I guess, from
Well,
them?
I didn't personally, but my team did. So they've collected a lot of information, and that's really was helpful in the RFP. And so when we're talking about making sure that they can provide accountability, help manage, make sure there's not fraud taking place, making sure that it's a secure system that all parties feel confident in. The contract that we eventually sign will address all of those parameters that are important, that we believe is important to make sure that we're implementing the process in a safe and responsible manner. And so, some of them said they had started with one and shifted to another. Sometimes it's on a reimbursement type basis. Sometimes it's all inclusive, so a closed platform. So there's a couple of different options that we can look at, and that's what the RFP will help us do.
And then, talking about that, making sure there's no fraud or transparency. I know we've talked a lot about this, but do you have any examples, maybe things just kind of floating around on how you can ensure that those sorts of things don't happen here?
Well, we do it like the 529s that we do right now. That's a secure platform. We're parents, and I'm one of them. I'm a grandparent, and I put money into our grandchildren's accounts so that they can utilize it when they go to college. And so it's a very similar type platform that we're looking at. So we've got a great example to mimic as we're looking at standing up a platform to manage the ESA services.
For sure. And so one of the other things is we know the costs for funding the scholarships each year, but there hasn't really been anything on how much it's going to cost to administer the program. And I'm not sure if you have a number or what the state could maybe, afford over the next couple of years.
Well, our fiscal health is strong. This is part of the system. We'll take that into account. We want to make sure that we have a secure platform, so that's very important too. So we'll have a better idea when we're through the RFP, and so we'll be able to disclose that to Iowans as we move through. But it's an important part of implementation. We want to make sure that we're doing it right and that we're rolling it out in the safest manner possible. And so I think it's really important that we look at a third party to be able to manage the account.
For sure. And then kind of my next thing was, just things that we've heard from Iowans is that taxpayers who maybe, don't have kids, who are helping send kids to other different schools, is there a way for them to maybe kind of have a voice in, how their money is spent? I know with like public schools, they can, vote somebody off a school board, different things like that.
Yeah. Again, we're going to go back. We're funding students and not a system. And so parents are going to make that decision. So, we decided we were going to fund education a long time ago. We fund people that have the resources, people that don't have the resources, people that don't have kids pay into the system. So that's been established a long time ago. And again, I think people, I think the fear mongering that's taking place is they're trying to elude that, 50, 35, 25% of Iowa public school students are going to pick up and go to a private school. And that's just not the case. There's no data there to support that. For the most part, parents are going to choose the public school that their child is in. That's just a fact. But for those that want something different, every single parent should have that choice, just not the people that have the finances and resources to do that. And if you look at other states that have been doing this for a long time, Florida's had some form of school choice since the early 2000s, and they only have about 3% max of their student population that's made a decision to go to a private school, and Arizona is only at 5%. So, you know, there's just no data to indicate that this is going to decimate our public school systems. I think, again, it makes us all better. It actually elevates education overall. So, you know, we'll monitor, but I don't think you're going to see the big fluctuations that people are trying to insinuate that's going to happen. And the other thing is, though, if you do have a large number of children and families that have made the decision to go to another school, then I think we might need to do an internal reflection of why are these parents picking up and making a decision to go someplace else. I think we would need to do an internal review of what our policies or what's going on that are making parents make that decision. So I don't think you're going to see it, but if it does, then we should probably take a look at what's going on and do something different. The other thing that I did this year with this bill that I think really helped make it successful is that, you know, I met with a lot of superintendents and principals and teachers and talked to them about what this was, how important it was that we have a strong public school system, but, you know, but parents should have choice. So what is it that you need that we could help make you achieve the goals, be the best that you could be? And one of the things that we heard over and over was more flexibility. You know, we tend to add, and we never take away. Chapter 12, they'll know what it is. I mean, maybe a lot of your listeners won't, but it's really an important chapter to our schools and the rules that they have to abide by. We really made that more flexible. And then in addition to that, we found a way for them to pay their teachers more money, to either do a bonus or to increase the teacher salaries, and then they can be more competitive with some of the other school districts. So I'm really proud that we were able to do that. Another key factor I think that helped was expanding operational sharing too, and especially for rural schools. That was really important to them.
And for some people who may not know what operational sharing is, can you kind of explain that?
Yeah, so if you're a rural school district and you're unable to get, like, let's just say a math teacher or a superintendent, you can actually share a superintendent between a couple different school districts. And so they use it a lot in rural Iowa, especially we're struggling right now to, you know, get teachers, but we got a plan for that with the teacher registered apprenticeship program. But for various teachers or superintendents, janitors, things like that, they're able to share between school districts.
And the flexible spending that you talked about, you know, being able to pay teachers more and things like that. Yeah. Whenever you talk to school superintendents, is that something that they said that they would like to be able to do?
Yeah, that's why, I mean, so that's one of the things that they brought up, especially in rural Iowa. So our average teacher salary for Iowa is about $59,000, and that doesn't take into account the cost of living. I mean, we pay more than the teachers than they do in Florida and Texas and some of the other states. So we're about midstream, but we're in a pretty good position. And we can do better. We should be rewarding the teachers that are, you know, educating our children in the classroom. But that's not the case a lot of times in some of our rural school districts. It's hard to be competitive. And so this will allow them to take some of their funds from some of the different programming that they have in place, and they can move that into teacher salaries. So it puts, you know, it gives them an option. They can do it or they cannot, but they have the flexibility now to make those decisions to whether bring on another teacher or to increase the teacher salary to be more competitive with some of the other school districts.
Gotcha. And then I know you probably don't have an exact date, but how much time, you know, would you like to give parents to be able to apply for these functions?
So we're off and running because we're starting it next school year. And so we've done the RFP, we've stood up a website. You can find that through at the Department of Education's website. There's a link there that will get you all the information that you need to have. You can sign up for reoccurring emails as more information comes online. Our goal is to have, I think June 1st would be the cutoff for making that decision on, you know, if you wanted to put your child in a different school, and then we would be able to stand it up for the beginning of the next fiscal year, which would be July 1.
And then one thing that was kind of, so you recommended for the SSA funding a 2.5% increase, and the Senate just did their recommendation yesterday of 2%.
Yeah.
And we were talking with Republicans in the House earlier that 2% wouldn't even cover the school choice. So
that's kind of a misconception. So this is new money going in. So this is part of the negotiating process. So this is, I put in 2.5 for the state supplemental, and then I did another 0.5. So for the teacher salary supplemental or teachers, it's at 3%. So state supplemental is 2.5, teacher state supplemental is at 3%. But when they say, oh my gosh, they're putting $106 million into ESA and they're only doing $84 million for public schools, no, we're doing $3.7 billion. That $82 million is just new money. So it's approximately $3.7 billion that's going into K-12 education versus $106 million that's going into ESA. That was another thing, some numbers that were thrown out. Over 4 years, it's projected that it would be about a $900 million cost for ESAs, and the same amount that would be going into public school systems was $15 billion that will go through to our K-12 public school education. So $15 billion, $900 million. So we're adequately funding our public schools. And I've said over and over, it's not just about the money, because we need to help everyone be successful and have the opportunity to be the best that they can be.
And then kind of switching gears a little bit now, there's a bunch of bills filing in the State House now. So one of them has kind of created some controversies, that gender identity bills that were going through the House and Senate. And I can kind of just explain them really quick, but one of them is that, K through 3rd grade in the House or K through 8th grade, not learning about gender identity or sexual orientation. And then the other one, which is just in the House right now, is that teachers would be required to tell parents if their child is transgender or not. What are your opinions on those two bills?
Well, and you won't be surprised, I don't weigh into legislation that's being filed unless it's my bill, because that's really what this legislative process is all about. It's about, putting different ideas forward, having the debate, getting it to a place where it passes both chambers, and then eventually, if it does, is sent to my desk for signature. So I don't weigh in on the bills that are being presented by the different legislators, because I want Iowans to actually do that. I will be putting forth a parental rights bill to just make sure that parents are the ones that are in charge of their children. So we've got one that'll be dropping soon if it hasn't already, and then we'll be happy to talk about that once that bill is filed and ready to move through the legislative process.
For sure. And so, I had a question about this. Merging state government, you mentioned in your condition of the state. Can you kind of just talk about that, explain to people who may not understand what that means? Yeah,
well, growth in government continues to happen, and we haven't done an evaluation of state government for over 40 years. And so we really did a deep dive into, how many agencies we have, how do we compare to surrounding states, similar size states that have similar populations, similar size budget, and we are way out of whack. Right now, we have 37 agencies that are in the executive branch, which is ridiculous. That's more than the President of the United States has in his cabinet. I think he has around 21. When I did the comparison with similar size states with a similar budget, they tended to have 15. So we'll go from 37 down to 16 cabinet positions in the executive branch. And part of the problem, we're not as efficient and effective as we should be. We're making Iowans go through too many doors to get the services that we need. We're not being effective or efficient. And in addition to that, when you tend to grow the size of government, it costs more. So this is a stat that I just found staggering and really, I think, highlighted the fact that we need to do something. So on a per capita basis in Iowa, we spend $2,000 more per capita than the state of Illinois, who has 4 times the population of Iowa. And if you look at all of the surrounding states, we are way out of line. We've got a great handout that we can get to your team so you can take a look at some of the information that we've gathered. So I'm very excited about this. We kind of did a couple test runs with some agencies. So we did Public Health and Human Services to form the new HHS. department. And so we did that last year. Nobody lost their job and no programs were downgraded. In fact, just the opposite happened. And we really had an opportunity to elevate a lot of people into new leadership positions and really coordinate the two agencies so that they can better serve Iowans. And then another one that I love to talk about, I talked about in the condition of the state, is with the administrative law judges that we brought together from workforce development and Department of Inspection and Appeals. They were able to address a 5,400 case backlog in 3 months. And that is serving Iowans, that's getting them answers. And that is two great examples of how we can be better at serving Iowans, and in addition to that, doing it at a lower cost, which gets money back to taxpayers.
And so one thing you said was that nobody would lose their jobs.
Right.
I think that's what we heard the most concern of, is
Yeah.
that people were afraid that they would lose their jobs. So I guess how would they not lose their jobs?
Well, because it's just not happening. I mean, those are two huge agencies with public health and with human services, but they were not aligned accurately or appropriately. And there was just so much duplication. And when you have duplication, that increases the cost. It makes it harder to disseminate the information. You know, if you're a single mom, single dad, and you're trying to figure out how to get services and you've got to go to 4 different places, I mean, that's ridiculous. We should make this as simple as possible to get the information to Iowans. Same thing with the administrative law judges. There's a way to better align and be more efficient with what we have, so we can do that without eliminating positions. I mean, we can eliminate unfilled positions, but people are not going to lose their jobs.
And then do you want to talk about any of the other things that you mentioned in the condition of the state, some of those bills that you said, might be dropping as well?
So, well, we're working on a tort reform. I talked about that. I think that's now moving its way through the chamber for Med-Mal. It's really important for access to health care, especially in rural Iowa and with a lot of the large non-economic settlements that we're seeing. It's having an impact. It's closing down our OBGYN clinics, and it's really sending our doctors out of state, and that's starting to become a real issue for services in rural Iowa. So, and we're an outlier. All of the surrounding states, the majority of states across the country, have something like this in place, and so we've talked about it for the last 2 years, and I just said with a couple of the large settlements that have just happened, we really do need to get something done this year. And so that's happening in both chambers. I had it in the condition of the state. It's part of my maternal health care package. It's important that we be able to do that. We're expanding centers of excellence. I'm very excited about that. It's kind of a hub and spoke with specialty hospitals. We've focused on maternal health care with the Grinnell and the Carroll Hospital. I've asked for funding to add 2 more, so I think that's exciting and another great opportunity, I think, for healthcare in rural Iowa. And then with the MOMS program that we started last year, adding a father's component to it, working with nonprofits all across the state to help mentor dads, help maybe with a job or parenting information, housing, and then doing a mentorship program for males in high school as well. So those are some of the things that we're working on that will hopefully be dropping soon. Alignment will be the next really big thing that we'll be working on, because it's a big bill, but a big chunk of that is HHS, so that's a big chunk of it.
For sure. And the DNC vote is coming up quickly. I know you've kind of talked a little bit about this before. What would kind of be, your message to national Democrats, but also Iowa Democrats?
Yeah, well, this is one area where we work together pretty well, because we know how important it is for Iowa that we maintain our first in the nation caucus, not just for Republicans, but for the Democrats as well. I talked about it in my swearing in response, because Iowans do it so well. We are knowledgeable about the issues. We ask good questions. It's a small state. It's a great place to test your message. You can do it relatively expensive. So it's not about the guy who has the most money that can put up all the ads on TV. It truly is a grassroots effort. And our work when they say, well, we don't reflect the country as a whole. We elected Obama twice. I would argue that we do, because Iowans are looking at the message, the individual, they're sizing them up, they're asking them good questions. But in addition to that, our role was never really to pick the winner. Our role was to, a lot of times, narrow the field, to help narrow the field as they moved on to the next state. So, I think it's really short-sighted. I think it's a big mistake. Again, we do it well. So I hope that they reconsider that and rethink the position and come back to Iowa. They won't regret it. It's a good way to vet the candidates, both parties.
And so we were at a press conference yesterday, where Republicans and Democrats were speaking, and they were, basically urging the DNC to, keep Iowa Democrats here. And they also mentioned that maybe one of the biggest threats to Iowa Republicans holding their caucuses here is if Democrats do move out. Do you think that could, become an issue?
Well, no, I think they're committed. I appreciate that. I think they understand the value. They've seen it. We've already had a lot of different individuals through our state. So, I think they see the value in it. They understand the role that Iowa plays. We're in the heart of the heartland. For all the reasons I just I just laid out. So I don't, we'll continue to lobby for it to make sure it's something that you really have to pay attention to. But I appreciate their willingness to continue to let Iowa be the first in the nation caucus. It's a caucus, so it's, and then you have New Hampshire follow with the first in the nation primary. I think both of us do it quite well, and we're very proud of the role that we play in the presidential process.
And then one of my last questions, there's a lot of divisiveness in politics and across the country, that we're seeing. Do you have any ideas on, what you can do as governor of Iowa to maybe kind of, bring everyone together instead of pulling everyone apart?
Well, I'm the governor of all Iowans, not just Republicans, and I'm really proud of the big pieces of legislation that I've been able to pass unanimously. Future Ready Iowa, which really helps Iowans get the skills they need to get a job and be successful and take care of their family. We were able to get that across the finish line with unanimous support. Mental health reform, I have worked extensively on that since I've been governor. I am so proud of the progress we've made. A lot of work to do, so I recognize that. But they had talked about a children's mental health system for 20 years, and I said, no, we're going to do it and get it done. We stood up by executive order task force, then we went to the legislature, we codified it, unanimous support. With adult mental health reform, with the property tax reform that we were able to move the funding for that was just instrumental. We got bipartisan support on that. We actually got bipartisan support on the tax cuts that we passed last year. So I think, unfortunately, the news only wants to talk about the divisive things that are going on. And it wasn't just Republicans that supported the school choice legislation that we just passed. There's a lot of people that believe that that's the right thing to do and are taking advantage of it. So that's across the board. A lot of hopefully single parents and middle-income families that want that choice will be able to have it. So, we'll continue to talk. I don't think maternal health care will be divisive. So there's a lot of really positive things. Alignment, I don't know how anybody could be against reducing the size of government, if we do it smart and responsibly, which I think we have. So hopefully, we're trying to lead by example, and we're not going to agree on everything. There's just some philosophical differences, and that's okay. That's why we have two parties. So we'll have that debate through the legislature and on the campaign trail, and wherever Iowans end up, then we'll move forward from there. But I think, real quickly, one of the reasons that we have been so successful as a party is we go out there and we tell Iowans what we're going to do. If you elect us, this is what we're running on, and we do it. I follow through with what I say I'm going to do, and if they decide that's not what they wanted, then they'll take action the next election cycle. But I've tried to be very transparent in the things that I would be running on and what I'd be doing, and I feel like I've done a pretty good job of following through with those issues, as well as those legislators that did the same thing.
And then I forgot, I skipped one on
That's
accident. Why was it so important for you to get this school choice bill passed and signed so quickly into session?
Well, okay, that's kind of so first of all, because we talked about it for 3 years. 3 years. So we started out with a pretty narrow bill, and it didn't go anywhere. So we kept working. I kept talking to different people. We came back a second year. We had a very healthy discussion about it last year. In fact, I held the legislators past the per diem, past the last day that they get refunded for being here, to continue to have the conversation because I felt that it was important. But it didn't, I wasn't successful. So, it was time to move on. I spent the whole campaign talking about it. Candidates that ran in primaries that supported school choice won by a significant margin. And so I felt like we had sign-off from Iowans that they wanted parents to have choice and they wanted us to move forward with this. So really a lot of the language was the same from last year that we discussed. Probably the newest components to the bill this year was what I put in there for some of our public schools, which was giving them flexibility, giving them the opportunity to use some of that programming for teacher salaries, expanding or extending the sunset on operational sharing. So most of the new stuff that was added, we removed the income limits, phased it in, went to universal in 3 years, but the components were basically the same. So, we had that conversation, we had an election, and we felt like it was okay to move forward with that. We had a public hearing. We had great turnout from that, so we talked a lot to Iowans about where we were going and what we were doing.
So I guess my biggest thing with that would just be, what's the difference between passing it, third week in a session or in March?
Well, we got to prioritize. We had the votes, you go for it. If you're working on a piece of legislation and you've got the votes, you move it. We had the votes, significant. We got 55 votes in the House. We got 31 in the Senate, so we had the votes. So why would you not pass it and move on? I got a lot of big things we're working on, a lot of things we told Iowans we would do. So at some point, you've got to take an issue, move it, go to the next. Take that issue, move it, and go to the next. And so the legislators have a lot of ideas on bills that they want to get through too. So, that's how it works here. When you've got the votes, you go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.